Hi, everyone. Oh, we've got Trevor too. All right, so I guess let's get started. So thanks everyone for being here. Not sure what time it is where you are, but hopefully you're on the East Coast and just enjoying your evening with some nice warm tea, coffee, whatever floats your boat this evening. I'm in the West Coast and I will kick it off today. I'm your moderator. My name is Cece. I am a 2016 St. Mike's graduate and I was an environmental studies major. And I will pass it along. Let's do the order of Chris, Kate, and Jack. And we'll just say, how about you just say what your name is, when you graduated from St. Mike's, and your favorite Halloween candy. Mine is Reese's Peanut Butter Cups.
Sure, thank you. I'm Chris Furlong. I'm in New Jersey. I'm a graduate St. Mike's biology degree, 2009, and Reese's Peanut Butter Cup.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kate or Caitlin. I currently live in Florida. I was class of 2015. Well, feels so long ago. And I really enjoy Skittles. I was also a biology major.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jack Loomis, class of 2016, and I was an environmental studies major. Put me on the spot there, Cece. I think Twix. I don't know if it's always been that way, but I had one earlier and it spoke to me. So yeah, I'm going with that.
All right, and just for folks so they know, there are two people who don't have their cameras on if you see them, and that's just Angie and Garrett, and they've helped organize that. So I don't know if you are able to use the reaction buttons, but feel free to give them a round of applause for organizing all this. Oh, we did, I see one. So I think someone raised their hand and that was supposed to be an applause. So we'll take it. All right, everyone. Garrett, did you want to say something? I just saw you go off mute.
No, I was going to say I'm here to monitor the chat. So if there's any impromptu questions or you don't feel comfortable participating live, obviously feel free to jump in and send some stuff to the chat, and I'll make sure I filter it up to this group.
Sounds good, thanks. And so while I get the questions up and running, I think I also want to know what everyone in the panel, in the webinar, what their favorite candies are. So feel free to drop it in the chat while I get these questions up, just so we can see who's here tonight and what kind of candy y'all like. If you can do that, I don't know if the settings are set that way, but I'm just gonna assume they are. Yeah, they are. All right, Jeremy likes Twix. Cool, cool, cool. Keep them coming in. All right, so I think what I'll do is I will start asking questions and then I'll change up the order of who responds. We'll just go round robin. And then if folks want to participate more or add something, feel free to do so. So the first question, I have them broken up to different themes, is the where it all started question. So what made you want to pursue environmentalism? Or how did you determine what sector of the environmental field you wanted to work in? So you can take whatever part of that question you'd like. And while folks are thinking about it, we can do the order of reverse order. So we'll go Jack, Kate, and Chris.
That sounds good. I'm seeing a lot of great candy choices. It makes me wish I had like a pile next to me, but it's all the way over there, so I'm gonna have to wait. Yeah, so where it all started, I'm from Cape Cod, and I don't know that I have like a particularly interesting story compared to like, I mean, I know some of the other presenters on this panel. And I think for me, it's just, I always grew up around beautiful natural spaces. And so the idea of working in them and protecting them and making sure that they continued to be the way that, you know, they were when I grew up was just always the thing that I wanted to do. I liked being outside. I saw that people like in my area, like park rangers or science teachers or, you know, folks working on interesting projects, like there were so many careers that you could go down and have a time where you could spend, you know, time outside and do work that mattered. And so I think for me, I always knew I wanted to do something with the environment. And I grew up in a family that cooked a lot. So I also felt very tied to food. And I kind of only really knew that going into St. Mike's. And then throughout courses and, you know, that kind of thing, sort of learned more about the way that agriculture works in our world and how it's tied to conservation and climate change and environmentalism in general. So yeah, I think it just came from me growing up on vacations, hiking in Vermont and growing up on the beach. and just loving those outdoor spaces, and then kind of understanding that you can have a career in those outdoor spaces if you know where to look. So that was me.
That was great timing and very succinct answer, so I'm all for it.
Yeah, and honestly, what a lot of what Jack has said resonates with me. So I grew up on the coast of Connecticut, and this is sort of, I guess, a quintessential story about myself. Is I went to marine science summer camp as a kid at a local aquarium, and I thought it was the bee's knees. That was like all I wanted to do. I was super exploratory as a kid, often getting into trouble because I was super like exploratory as a kid, and so I just had sort of like a natural curiosity. But I didn't think that I could make a career out of it. And so I also really liked working with kids. And so I wanted to make a difference. And so, you know, when I went to St. Mike's, I chose biology because I wanted to become a pediatrician. And it was actually like my intro bio course where I met Doug Facey. And he like is a fish biologist. If you don't know him in the department, or hopefully he's still there. It's been a minute since I've chatted with him like in pandemic, but it totally opened my eyes to folks are doing stuff and they're asking questions and they're pursuing those questions and they're teaching and they're connecting about nature with other folks. That was super engaging and interesting to me. And I then just started pursuing things while I was in college, kind of focused around ecology and conservation, and sort of hit the ground running from there. But originally I did not think that this was something that people could work in or that it was maybe closed off, is that, oh, only certain people can work in this field, or there's only so many jobs that are in this field. But it's really become quite diverse, and continues to expand, which is quite exciting, I think. So when I first got to St. Mike's, had no idea that this was even a thing. So I love that y'all are really thinking about that right now.
Yeah, those are both really great answers. I think for me, you know, I have a distinct memory. My senior year, spring semester, I did a tropical ecology tour with Professor Hope and the late Dr. Green, and we were having dinner on the last night there. And you know, I was a bio major. All of my studies were cellular, subcellular. You know, bioinformatics was the big thing at that time. Studying a lot of protein structure. I was doing some research with Mark Lubkowitz on protein transport in epiphytes, and you know, we were studying ferns in Costa Rica with Professor Hope. And you know, I was always kind of drawn to like the natural world, you know, but I always sort of thought that I was going to go into pharmacy, you know. So with a bio degree, you can kind of go into pharmacy, you know, or the medical route, you know, or you can go into education. You know, a lot of my classmates, you know, pursued, you know, advanced degrees and went to become professors or teachers. But I went into industry, you know, I went into consulting, you know, so I went into the cleanup end of things in the environmental, you know, industrial side. So it was at that dinner, you know, that we were kind of talking about career, you know, like you're graduating in a few months, where you're going to go from here. And there were a couple classmates at the table, and we all kind of were talking through the environmental sort of consulting career path, you know, and that was something I had never thought about. And I leaned into my network. You know, it was 2009 at that time, and you know, we were definitely deep in a recession, and it was a really tight job market. And I was sending resumes out like crazy. You know, just all different industries, all different markets, all different geographies. You know, I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do. And the only interviews that I even got were in industry, you know, in consulting. So it's been a blessing, you know, close to 15 years later. It's turned out to be a good choice for me, but it was sort of that meal that I had with Professor Hope and, like I said, the late Dr. Green, that really kind of like paved the way for me, you know, to kind of start it off.
These are great answers. Thanks so much for sharing all your stories. It's been a while since I've gotten to catch up with some of these folks and meet some of them for the first time. So I just want to express my appreciation. I am also an environmental studies major, so I don't know if I'm supposed to be talking about my journey, but I'm just going to do it because I'm getting some nods from the folks here. So I also joined consulting recently. environmental consulting side, but I came in as environmental studies major, wanting to do more nonprofit work, but honestly did some nonprofit work and really interested in environmental justice and thinking about conflict resolution. And so those things have walked me all the way through to where I am today. And I do a lot of public outreach for projects where they may need public input about, for example, California high-speed rail is coming in. How do we reach out to people and let people know how it's coming, how it's impacting their communities and getting that input? So that's kind of some of the work that I do. And I think it's a really great intersection for me to pay off my grad school loans and also get experience working with different clients at the federal government level, local level, and communities as well. So that's kind of how I merge everything together in terms of environmentalism now. So the next set of questions that we have are pertaining, some are more specific to others, but I think a general question will hopefully answer some that have been submitted of kind of how you got into your job and your major and making that jump from how your major applies to what you do now, or does it not? I know, for example, there's environmental science and then there's environmental studies, and those are different at St. Mike's because you come out with either a BA or a BS. And so sometimes, depending on what you want to do, those may be more, quote, marketable. So I think if you were all able to speak on your major choice and how that kind of brought you to where you are. I know, Chris, you talked about it a little bit. So maybe I'll start with Kate this time and we can do Kate, Jack, Chris.
Sure. So I guess have more of like a straight path journey as a bioscience kind of major. You end up with a BS. However, there's lots of folks that are very successful where I'm at right now that did not get that and they got BAs and it worked out just fine. To be honest, it's really about building your resume, which I know is like the bread and butter of career panels and career advice, but it's really about putting yourself out there and acquiring a resume for the job that you like. So there's definitely some like course barriers, but not necessarily degree barriers. So what I mean by that is that some degrees or some jobs want you to have experience in X, Y, and Z. You can still be an environmental science or studies major, for example, and get that major and take some classes that would benefit you in the long run. You know, so there's multiple paths and multiple journeys. So hopefully that's like one of the biggest takeaways. And I think that that's honestly the purpose of this panel is that there's multiple paths to wherever you'd like to end up. Now, I eventually went through like traditional academia. So then I also got my master's in science as well. But there was not everybody in my master's program that originally earned a BS and then found themselves in the kind of traditional academia route. So kind of keep that in mind as well, that if you have something that you are interested in and that don't let, you know, your major define you. And then also don't let, oh, I didn't take that class when I was in college. Like I just, you know, shot my shot and it's too late and these doors are forever closed. There's a lot of students that I don't know if we're talking about our career, like what we're doing right now, CC, but I work as like a lab coordinator at a university. So where I did my master's work. And a lot of students are doing like post-bac work. So taking some classes because they realized something a couple years out of school and they're taking a couple of classes to then pursue what they're most interested in. So I think that, again, it really just depends on if you are enjoying what you're doing right now, if you're feeling like this is a, you know, kind of vocational work to you, if you feel like it's core to you, if you're not even sure if it's core to you or not, but you're having a good time, like thinking about these sorts of questions, thinking about where you fit into that. You know, I think that there's still a lot of doors open to you, you know, and there's not, oh, I have to make it happen when I'm at St. Mike's or it's over. That's not true at all. That was sort of a very roundabout answer, but hopefully that resonated with some folk.
Well, I think it resonated with me. And that's what matters. No, I really agree with what Kate said. You know, Kate and I went to school around the same time. And I think the biggest thing that you can do for yourself is play to your strengths. And so for me, I chose environmental studies, not because I'm not good at environmental science or I don't like environmental science, but I thought that the breadth of the environmental studies was a better fit for me. And that doesn't mean that I did no environmental science stuff. It just meant that I tended to trend towards more environmental studies and humanities courses at school. And that's just something that I thought was interesting. I thought that, some people might be more, predisposed to be hard science focused. I still use hard science daily, but it's something that I was more drawn to as someone who kind of had struggled to choose between an English major and an environmental studies or science major. I kind of like split the difference and went for environmental studies. So it was a BA for me, but I don't regret it. I know that was one of the questions was, do you regret it? Not in the slightest. And here's why. After school, I went to law school. I went to Vermont Law School. And I think if I had focused personally for me on environmental science the whole time, I would have actually not been set up properly for environmental studies. Still probably would have had a great career. Environmental science is an awesome career. The professors, the networks are great. St. Mike's is super good for that. All of these other folks are a super good example of that. But my time focusing on studies, I think marketed my strengths and played to my strengths better, because then I get to start talking a bit more about policy and, the legal system and how that relates to climate and the environment. So, I think it's a personal question. And either way, I think from the St. Mike's curriculum, you'll be well prepared because you sort of have to dabble in both. And then for me, it was just kind of like, I went to Vermont Law School. I did a lot of it remotely. I embedded myself in a community in Ohio and actually did externships and clinical work there while studying remotely because I met my wife at St. Mike's. She works for Harvard. She's over there in that room reading a book. But so we were out there and it's like, you can do this work anywhere. Just what kind of work do you want to do? And I think that's one of those things where you're not shooting yourself in the foot going one way or the other. It's just good to be thinking about what you like and what you think you're going to be effective at and what would make you most competitive in the job market. Where am I going to outshine other people? It's a very collaborative field, but if we're being honest and we're trying to get jobs, we want to do the things we're good at. So for me, after law school, I worked at a law firm for a while. St. Mike's grad, hooked it up, by the way. That's part of the reason I got that job. So network people. And then after that, I joined the Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And I'm a partner employee. So I work for American Farmland Trust some of the time. And I work for NRCS, which is the USDA, a lot of acronyms, a lot of the time. And all of the work is actually central around DEIJ, diversity, equity, inclusion, justice work that I do. And I would just close by like a plug for the environmental studies program. I spent the first half of today answering questions about biodissolved oxygen and manure and how to mitigate the damage of, degraded plant conditions near farmsteads and cow pasture. I spent the second half of the day, for lack of a better phrase, like yelling at white people, trying to make our systems a little different and a little more inclusive within the BIPOC community and the urban agriculture in the city of Boston and shifting that policy. So you just got to do what you know you're good at and what you like.
Wow. Again, great answers. Jack, let's connect. It's interesting. Just mirroring almost exactly what you just said. I think leaning into your strengths is important. For me, I was, like I said, I was going the pharmacy route. So for me, the hard science was where I was at, the cellular, subcellular stuff, so had there been a major in genetics, had there been a major in I don't know, molecular bio, maybe I would have specialized, but at that point, those majors weren't offered. I think now there's a major for bioinformatics. I'm not sure, or at least a concentration, but that didn't exist when I was there. But yeah, for me, I just kind of was always curious, I was always drawn to science. There wasn't any real career path in mind for me when I was studying bio. I was just kind of like skiing a lot and just kind of living the St. Mike's, sort of community life, just kind of like trying to get a good GPA and the rest will work out later, and that's kind of been always worked. It's always kind of worked out for me in that way. But yeah, just kind of playing to your strengths, it got me in the door, in my current career field. And then I learned, once I got into the environmental field, I learned that my strengths are really communicating, my strengths are really leading people. So I went back for a master's of business, so now I'm more in a leadership role in my organization. So I still do some of the consulting, I still do a lot of technical report writing, I manage a team and the whole nine, but, it's really about finding your strengths. When I was a 19, 20-year-old, my strengths were in science, and now my strengths are different. And you just evolve and you adapt. And that sounds like what Jack, Caitlin, Cece, it sounds like that's what all of us do as you grow in your career. So yeah, I think that was appropriate advice and perfect, just follow your strengths and just stay plugged into where your interests are and also where the opportunities are, and in the environmental field, it's ever changing. The regulations are constantly changing. The contaminants that we're focused on are constantly changing. The threat of climate change is always going to be present. There's constant innovation with respect to sustainability, food science, all different things that are really important. And they're solving very real challenges in the world. And, there's always going to be room and opportunity for people that are forward thinking, and having the background to understand some of the concepts and to apply them to new challenges and to real world challenges. It's going to be, the next Teslas, it's going to be the next Amazons, the folks that can kind of think through those challenges. So just really important.
Thanks all. It looks like we're getting some questions in the Q&A, so I'm just going to jump to those quickly. One question from Nadia is, did any of you study abroad? And you can just say yes and where you studied, and then I'll move on to the next question. So it'll be a quick answer. So yes, I studied abroad. I went to Beijing, China, and got to hang out and think about environmental issues and how they're impacting people, as they are very much following our footsteps, for better or worse.
I also studied abroad, but I went to the Galapagos. So it was like bio nerd dream to live out there. And St. Mike's does not have like a marine science concentration. So that's really where I built that up and got some hands-on research experience. So that's what I did when I was abroad, and it didn't like throw my trajectory off or anything like that. Worked with the study abroad office to make sure that I could have my cake and eat it too. And it worked out just fine.
I didn't, short of a tropical ecology tour that I referenced before, and one weekend in Mystic, Connecticut with Declan McCabe. That was it.
I would love a weekend in Mystic, Connecticut with Declan McCabe. No, I didn't either. I missed Cece terribly while she was gone. It sounds awesome, but I just stayed home and skied. Galapagos, though, that sounds great. Let's do that.
Another question in the chat is from Marissa, and Marissa asked, what was your master's PhD research thesis in? And we can do that quick, but this is my simple plug for check out when you registered. It's got all of our LinkedIn information. So if you want to connect with us professionally or find out more stuff about what we did, check it out. I did my master's and I got it at the University of Michigan School for Environment and Sustainability, working on a track for environmental justice specifically. And we didn't do a thesis, we did a project, and our project was based on the California Marine Protected Areas. And we interviewed folks who were along the coastline and how these marine protected areas were working. Did they work, and what did they like and not like about it? So that's what we focused on.
Oh, I think I connected with you on LinkedIn, Marissa. Hi, how are you? So good work. The plugs do work because I will chat back. So I think I mentioned this before, but I did my master's work at Florida Atlantic University down in Boca Raton. That's where I currently live as well. And my work was a little bit of a challenge, but I worked in the shark and stingray lab. And my paper, actually, my manuscript just got published over the summer on puncture performance of stingrays, so flat sharks, and it was awesome. So a little bit more like an engineering brain and kind of combined with their ecology. So, and I also too, if folks are kind of curious, I'm happy to connect with folks who are interested in like traditional academia. I don't know if there'll be like space on this panel for that. You know, why I did not pursue a PhD at this time and things like that, but just putting that out there as well. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, we can chat about it.
I can go. I did a Master of Food and Agricultural Law and Policy from Vermont Law School, which actually is a pretty collaborative relationship with St. Mike's, just being close locally. I focused particularly on local food systems, on community-based advocacy and leadership, and local regulations and considerations in terms of dismantling basically laws and policies that don't act in favor of local food security, and trying to find ways to basically just do right and feed everyone.
Yeah, so I took a long break. I was working for close to 10 years before I went back for my master's, really just finding a company that would pay for it. But I went to Rutgers Business School. They have a dual program. It's a Master of Business and Science. So it's a Master of Business for technical folks. So it's kind of a dual track. You have your science concentration, and then you get a business degree as well. So my science concentration was urban environmental analysis, and then also the core business courses as well, which were, marketing, leadership, finance, all those types of courses. And my final project was related to indoor sensors that regulate, VOCs and temperature and various parameters in like an office or multifamily setting that has a democratization to it. So tenants or occupants are able to vote, and the idea is that democratization would lead to a net reduction in energy usage and VOCs and all those types of things. So it was just a network of sensors. It was actually a technology that was developed in Norway that we brought to market in the United States.
I think Kate and I are in the same way of, wow, that's cool. Very cool. And I do appreciate you, Chris, saying how much time you spent in between undergrad and grad school. I think I was talking with a St. Mike's student, and they were like, I got to go to grad school. My parents want me to go to grad school, all this jazz. And my biggest advice to them and to anyone who's thinking about it, go when you're ready and go when you know what you want to do, because you've been in school for a really long time and this is a huge accomplishment, and take a freaking break. And if you can, so you can kind of figure out what you want, you can do different programs, you can go woofing as some people do. You can do a bunch of different things, you can work. So there are opportunities for you to get out there and figure out what really you care about and what you want to continue your learning with, if that's something you want to do. But you don't have to. Plenty of people are doing really great things without those extra degrees, and they're pricey. So if you can get someone to pay for them, double thumbs up. That leads into my other question that somebody had for specifically Caitlin, but I think a couple of us can actually answer this, is some people are thinking about AmeriCorps, and do you recommend? Is that what you did? And so if that applies to you, if you want to quickly speak on that, and then we'll get to more questions that involve everyone, because I don't want to exclude some panelists.
I can just jump in there too, Cece. Before though, I'd love to piggyback on what you said. So as part of my position right now, I oversee actually the entire biology department graduate like teaching assistants. So there's like 80 of them that I manage on a regular basis every day. And we serve like well over 2,000 students in the bio department alone with the labs that I oversee. They all had different journeys to get to their graduate program. And for some of them, they have like kids that are 10 and 11 years old, and they are getting their master's or they're getting their PhD right now. So there's multiple paths to school and multiple ways to pay for their school. So they are obviously paying it through a GTA or a graduate teaching assistantship. So they teach labs for me, and I apply a tuition waiver for them. So it's a pretty cush job for them. But chatting a little bit about my journey to graduate school is I actually did a couple of different things, but one of them was AmeriCorps, which was pretty interesting. So I actually lived in Lynn, Massachusetts, and or lived in Salem, Massachusetts, worked in Lynn, Massachusetts, with a program called Beach Sisters. It was housed at Girls Inc. So Girls Inc. is an after-school girls program, inspiring girls to be strong, brave, and bold. It's been a minute, but essentially it's all about girls empowerment. And I taught a marine science STEM related program after school to kindergartners, middle schoolers, and high school students. And then I trained the high school students to be peer leaders. So they actually were the ones delivering the program. And that was my first experience truly managing folks. I had some leadership experience from St. Mike's, but I was not being like, this was my full-time like sort of manager type role. I really loved the work. And I really enjoyed AmeriCorps as a whole. I did get an educational stipend, so I did apply that when I went to graduate school, which was a perk. But really, it gave me sort of like, I don't want to say like the slap in the face that I needed, but I think as somebody who grew up white, educated, like middle class, it was really important to see and experience sometimes sort of how the other folks in a community very similar to the community I grew up in live. And that was super important. It was super important for me to struggle during that time. I didn't struggle alone. I had a community, I had a support system, which I think is a real benefit of AmeriCorps. But it was probably one of the hardest, but also one of those things that ends up being the best thing for you. Because also too, when I went into my graduate program, I felt sort of more of like a worldly experience where I didn't caught up on sort of the little things like traditional academia, like people can get really spiraled and siloed into different things. And I was kind of like, it's fine, we'll figure it out, because we have heat, and for air conditioning, and we have all these different things, that are so great. And here we are, like literally just sitting in a room talking about sharks and figuring it out and asking sort of these like big questions. So yeah, I would say it's probably a really challenging part of my journey in life. But like I said, I think I got quite a bit out of it, and something that I helped make me, I think, more of a global citizen, if you catch my drift. That wasn't succinct. Sorry, Cece.
That was good though. I mean, I can speak to it too. I was also in AmeriCorps during grad school. And so that was, I had a few things going on. Yeah, Cece's face is inaccurate, if you all saw that. So it's hard and it's honest. And it takes many forms. So it's hard to speak to AmeriCorps like you would even speak to something like a environmental studies or environmental science degree, which is more or less similar tenets regardless of where you are. I was a college completion coach in rural Ohio. And, I was trying to help folks of all walks of life basically navigate their time through community college, which, like Kate says, exposes you to the kind of stuff you don't necessarily deal with in a lab or certainly at a law firm. Or like any of these other places. People have real problems. And I think that St. Mike's prepared me well for it. Certainly you don't take the job for the money. But I see, yeah, I think I got like $5.30 an hour or something like that. But it was kick-ass. I think it can really depend on the community that you have to support you there. I think it's a time where you're gonna grow regardless. The one thing I can say about it is that there's a chunk of time that you're gonna be in it. So it's not like it's like something you have to do forever. So I think that was partially a reason that I was able to manage it, was it just worked out well with my time frame. It was challenging work, but it has taught me a humility that I probably didn't have before, and made me I'd say a better person. So I just think you need to research what is being asked of you and know that it's not going to be a job where you just kick back and coast. That's not going to happen.
I also did AmeriCorps, so I just want to quick speak on that as well. I did my AmeriCorps in Burlington with Spectrum Youth and Family Services in the Multicultural Youth Program. So kind of a big, long title. So basically worked in a nonprofit serving young people ages 14 to 24 in Burlington. And a lot of our populations were federally identified refugee and new Americans. And so my big task was really just to provide programming and support them. And I think the biggest thing that came out of it for me was I had taken Tracy Griffith's Race, Gender, and Ethnicity in the Media, and it opened a lot of doors to things that I was feeling as a person of color and not knowing how to put a name to them. And so taking that class, being like, oh, I experience microaggressions all the time, whether it's in my life growing up or even at St. Mike's. And so that really made me think about how can I take this love that I have for the environment and how do I incorporate that? And doing an AmeriCorps program, just spending time with communities that I may not cross all the time, was just a really humbling experience and just great to get to know some of the people doing great work in Vermont that are people of color. So that was a really great opportunity for me, but it really sucked in the sense where, you know, a lot of these organizations don't have the support they need. And so they have to rely on AmeriCorps folks to do the jobs that people should be getting paid for. We have college degrees, you know, it would be nice to have a job that can actually pay us what we're worth. And so it was definitely a sacrifice in that sense. So I think you just have to tread lightly, like Jack said, do your research and see if it's something that's worth your time. So thank you for that question. Back to the job stuff. Some people have some questions about how'd you get your job? What was the application process like? And then any advice. But I think the question that I'll target on is, can you share anything you wish you knew when you began looking for jobs in the environmental field? Because I think a lot of folks on the call are in that stage right now. Kate and Jack and I did some talking first. I know I just put this question on you, but do you feel prepared to go first?
I think you cut out. Did you ask me to go first? Sorry,
Yeah,
the
if you don't
audio
mind.
cut
Yeah.
out for a second there. Okay, yeah, cool. Things you wish you knew. Yeah, I guess, you know, when I was a new graduate, I guess I'll preface this by saying, you know, I was the first person in my family to go to college. So nobody in my family had been through that journey. I come from a very blue collar family of laborers. So I was sort of blazing my own trail, and I learned a lot of lessons the hard way. So, you know, especially with respect to student loans, I wish I had somebody to talk me through that, before enrolling at St. Mike's. But anyway, you know, I guess some of the big lessons that I learned, you know, is you really want to tailor your resume for the job you're applying for. You know, every resume should be tailored to the job. You know, whatever skills they're looking for, you want to make sure those skills are represented on your resume. Also these days, you know, AI plays a big part in the job, you know, search process, and a lot of big organizations are using bots, you know, to screen resumes. So you want to make sure that your resume is going to get through the applicant tracking system, you know, so there are tools out there. You know, you can use JobScan, you know, you can put your resume side by side with the job listing, and it'll tell you what percentage is your resume a match to that job listing, you know, and that'll be really helpful for you when it comes time to tailor your resume to the position. Also, you know, I alluded to it earlier, you want to lean into your network. You know, that's where it all starts. You know, your network are the folks that are going to help you. And St. Mike's as a community is a gift, honestly. Large universities can't offer you the same networking capabilities that St. Mike's can. So get to know your classmates, you know, get to know your professors, you know, get to know the industries where St. Mike's grads are working. You know, go on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's important. Go in and just search for St. Mike's alumni, join the alumni group and find people that are working in the industry, connect with them, you know, and just people love to talk about themselves. Ask people questions, you know, what are you doing? Where are you at? How'd you get there? You know, and that's really important. But if there's a specific company or organization that you wish to work with, you know, figure out who their leadership is, you know, figure out what their values are, their mission, you know, learn about the company. And when you get into an interview, when you get to that stage, speak to that, you know, speak to the company's culture, speak to what you've learned about the company and why you've done a little extra work. Be disciplined about it, because those are the things that stand out. A lot of times people I interview folks all the time, and people show up and they're just, well, what do you know about, the company I work with is called Weston. So what do you know about Weston? Oh, I know you guys are a big federal contractor, but I don't really know the markets you work in. It's like, well, it's on our website. How do you not know the markets? Did you not even look at our website before this interview? Like, it takes 15 minutes. So just be prepared, and those are the things that differentiate people. So yeah, I guess those are the big ones for me is, tailor your resume to the job, lean into your network, and, be prepared for the interview when you get to that point.
I'm just gonna go quick. So it's 7:42. Go back to 7:39 and listen to what Chris said 4 more times, because that's it. I was lazy with my cover letters. I think I was like, oh, they're all roughly the same thing, and there's some truth to that. But like, people can tell if you've just been applying like crazy. And I get the temptation to cut corners, but it's not worth it. My LinkedIn was probably pretty sloppy too. And I don't know, fundamentally, I don't like that people can judge you so quickly over the internet instead of having the time to get to know you. I'd still hire kind of like 21-year-old me over 27-year-old me, to be honest. I think I was hungrier, for real, like even without the law degree or anything else. But take the time. And then this is my little outline for tonight. And on the back, I just wrote self-care, which I realize now is backwards for you, but for me, it's forwards. It is not easy. I hope for you that it is easy. I hope that you get the first job you want, but you probably won't. And that's not nice to hear, but them's the what is it? Them's the things. I don't know. It's a challenge. And there are so many days where I could have just gone home and just taken care of myself, that I instead continued to dig because I was like, no, I'm hungry. I don't come from a lot of money. I need to work hard. I need to make money, blah, 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 blah. And I didn't ever back off and just take a night for myself. And that's like a luxury that some people have and some people don't. But even if you don't think you have it, make sure you take care of yourself through this process, because you're probably looking at a fair bit of rejection, even if you're incredibly talented. And, I think we're all fairly successful, but you're new to the game. I mean, it's a hard thing. And I have very, very high confidence that you'll get there, but you got to take care of yourself along the way. Got to do that.
No, I totally echo exactly what you all said. And I think too, it's all about that persistence, but know that it's going to be a long-term thing, and kind of pace yourself for that. Sometimes it can be kind of rough, but just pacing yourself for those situations as well. And not really taking rejection personally, which is so hard, which is so hard, right? So like, not saying that I didn't cry because I didn't get a job. It's like sometimes you're just like, I'm striving so hard, but not getting discouraged by that and saying like, okay, next job, because at the end of the day, no one's coming, right? Like no one's coming to get you that job. Your network can only get you so far, but like Chris said, you have to get yourself in the interview and you have to show your best self, I think too, a little bit to highlight as well is like finding a resume of someone who you maybe would like to be, and looking at sort of their path and their journey. And if those things are hiring again, or if there's like a sister organization or something like that, is super important. So tailoring sort of your resume, and then also kind of deciding like, if I had 5 or 6 jobs, how would I feel about that? Like what is my dream job? I think too, sometimes we get so pigeonholed in environmental science sometimes, or, biology or STEM or whatever we're really going to call this panel, is like, this is my dream job. I like have so many folks in like the total research world that are like, this is my one job that I've got to go for it. And it's like, okay, but you're just signing up because for like sort of like some despair, it's like, these are some things that I really enjoy. And I wouldn't be mad doing those things, I think there's too a little bit of a difference between vocation and career. Like I feel deeply connected to nature. I feel deeply connected to fish and like biology, But that's not really what I'm doing right now currently with my gig. I'm doing that kind of on the side, and it's totally cool and it totally works for me. And right now, people probably would classify what I am as like a boss doing education logistics, and that's okay too. Especially too for the folks that are non-binary and identify as women on this call, apply for the job. Apply for the job. Because folks who identify as men, even if they have about 60% of the qualifications, they will apply anyway. Women will always take themselves out of the, and non-binary folk will always take themselves out of the game before they even get started, and you might be having, these transferable skills like that these AI bots are picking up on that you wouldn't even realize. You're like, oh, because I didn't work in a lab and I have this skill and this skill and this skill, you're eliminating all the great skills that you might bring to the table. Maybe that person, that did have these qualifications wasn't serving this position. And maybe somebody with sort of a fresh eyes or a fresh perspective might be really good for that organization. So don't take yourself out of the game, but I definitely agree as well with Jack, and tailor that cover letter so they actually know that you're interested in the game. Because sometimes you're like, we oversee, it seems like a lot of us are sort of in managerial type positions. We see all of these different papers. We're just constantly getting fresh information about folks that are interested in jobs, right? Or interested in anything. And, make yourself stand out by being you, right? So that's also something too, is that just being yourself and being authentic, and it just really goes a long way.
Thanks all. I have been really appreciating this advice, and I hope you all are too. Garrett flags a couple questions, so we're going to go back in time to our St. Mike's lives and ask, who is your favorite? Well, what was your favorite class? It looks like a small typo. What was your favorite class that you took at St. Mike's? And I'll go, and then we can do Jack, Kate, and Chris. Mine was environmental conflict resolution with Anjanette DiCarlo, who is now at a different school. But that class was like, oh, damn, I really want to do this. And I still do. And so I'm working toward that.
Yeah, I'm on the DiCarlo train. Permaculture was awesome. Yeah, permaculture design principles. Everything has to use multiple uses. Just, look around you and challenge yourself about what you see, and think about those environmental implications, and really just spend time in those places. Really changed my perspective.
I think for me was probably ichthyology with Professor Facey. Fun. And then I also really liked, I forget what it's called, but it's the first year class where it's like exploratory, like first year seminar. Maybe that's what it's called. I really enjoyed that class, to be honest.
So CC and Jack, that professor wasn't there when I was a student, nor were those courses offered. But the conflict resolution course sounds really cool. I regret not being offered that. My response is much more boring, but I really enjoyed evolutionary bio with Doug Green. So
that is not a boring answer, Chris, not at all. And then, all right, the next question we have from a anonymous attendee is, what was one of the best opportunities you had coming out of St. Mike's? And I will go because I've been looking at it, so I've been thinking about it. For me, I think being a part of the extended service committee and being a part of admissions, those were kind of my thing. I really first year tried to do a little bit of everything, and it was too much. And I was like, what do I actually care about here? And was able to meet great people through those things that I did, but also still had a chance to meet other people at school. So I didn't want to silo myself, but I didn't want to burn myself out either, because I had homework to do. So being a part of admissions and talking to the team, and yeah, extended service definitely still holds a really big place in my heart. And I'll go Chris, Kate, Jack.
the question is coming out of St. Mike's or while at St. Mike's?
What was one of the best opportunities you had coming out of St. Mike's? So I answered in St. Mike's, so I realize I might have answered that wrong. Whoops. Chris, interpret it however you want.
Yeah. I think probably I am super grateful for St. Mike's. just as an institution and as a community. Like I said, I hate to beat a dead horse, but I was the first person in my family to go to college. So like I said, I was blazing a lot of trails, and I was lost a lot of the time. But Donna Bazone, Dr. Bazone, you know, I hope she's still with St. Mike's. She's a gift. But she, you know, she really kind of took me under her wing almost in a maternal sense. You know, she was, you know, I'm from New Jersey, you know, I kind of have like the Jersey thing sometimes in my mannerisms and in my communication and in my attitude. And she went to Princeton, you know, so she gets that. And she kind of nurtured me in a way that I don't think I would have been able to get that personalized attention. And I often found myself distracted, you know, I often found myself not, you know, working to my potential, you know, just making the mistakes that kids make. And Dr. Bazone, you know, she really pulled me aside one day and was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, come on, you're so much smarter than this. And I needed that. I really needed that. That was a real wake-up call for me. So since then, I mean, I'm really focused. I'm hyper driven. I'm very energetic. I've had a lot of opportunities professionally and personally since graduating St. Mike's. But honestly, that experience with Dr. Bazone really sticks out to me as a special moment in my life and as really like a transformational experience, because it was a tension that came from a place of love and a place of experience that was really important for me. So I think just that, you know, that's a personal example, but I think everybody can find something similar, you know, at St. Mike's of the personalized care that you probably wouldn't get at a larger institution.
Chris, I love that. I love that. I think that's so true. That again, even though a lot of folks are like, oh, you know, St. Mike's, everyone has a very similar experience, but a lot of us, I think, have these sort of like touchstone moments where we're like, wow, like that was really grounding. And just even thinking about sort of like the network thing that you were chatting about before too. So I actually like went into contact with an alumni. Wow, let's wrap it up, Caitlin. So somebody that was working like in the marine biology field, and I was interviewing her. She lived in my hometown or near my hometown, and she worked at the Mystic Aquarium and Dr. Tracy Romano. And I was like, she's so awesome, you know, but I felt like I was like trying to do almost like too much, you know, and she was like, you are never going to make it unless you focus yourself. And she was like, you cannot love everything. And it's so true, you know. And so I think just finding your niche and finding your stride really was beneficial, and having like that type of conversation. And then how that sort of helped me get my foot in the door outside of kind of the St. Mike's realm was I did like a marine science fellowship in Georgia, like right after college. And I don't want to say I barely needed any qualifications, but they were very understanding that it was like a stepping stone fellowship to someone who was interested in working in marine science and or environmental education. And so also just finding different things like that where folks are looking for like entry level type positions or new grads or recent grads was really beneficial as well. So folks that are maybe interested in more marine science or environmental education post degree, talk to me about LinkedIn, but I can talk to you a little bit more about my experience in Georgia.
Yeah, going to grad school after, I felt a little bit like, where the heck am I in Eastern Ohio? And so one way that I think St. Mike's prepared me was that we always volunteered. So I found myself volunteering at this community, it's called Community Food Initiatives. And I was gearing up to do an externship there as part of my law school curriculum. And it was in a food pantry, big food processing plant. So it always smelled like tomatoes. And I had just finished up talking to the person who I was volunteering with. And I walked across the hallway of this building and poked my head in this door of this interesting looking place that basically it was like an offshoot of the Southeastern Ohio Public Energy Council. And they were working on electrification, clean fuels and renewable energy and electrical vehicles and that kind of stuff. And I just said hello and just started talking to them. I just showed up, basically. I didn't show up like necessarily looking for something. I was just volunteering. I started talking to this person, and next thing you know, I get an internship with them for 10 hours a week while I'm doing AmeriCorps and finishing school. And that internship, in addition to just being awesome work, paid for my rent when I was there. And actually, when I started at the firm, there were a couple of months where Victoria was still finishing grad school and I had moved back to Boston, and they let me work remote on basically forums and electrification policy and just like running their social media, that kind of stuff. Wow. And it paid for my rent that was due in Ohio while I was transitioning to working in Boston, which was huge. And to this day, they're like my mentors. And it's just, I just poked my head in. And I mean, there's a lot of privilege in that, but also they saw an opportunity, they had a need, I showed up. And showing up is not always easy, but that's an example of like, whoa, you really never do know. You think you know, and you might be right, but also you don't know. And that's an example of something that was like, wow, super formative for me.
Thanks all. So I know we are just about wrapping up, but I do see one more question in the Q&A queue, I guess it's called. So maybe we can close on that. And then one thing while we're answering, hopefully won't be too distracting for panelists, but if you hear that, I have a foster dog and it's like scratching, so there's thumping background noise, sorry. But yeah, in the chat, participants, if you can say one thing that you're taking away from this, panel while I queue up the next question, that would be great, just to kind of hear some feedback and know that you all exist out there. So the question for us panelists is, if you were to change one thing about your career path, what would it be and why? And I realize that can be kind of deep, but we are running out of time. So if you can kind of keep it brief. For me, I wouldn't say I'd change anything. I think it would be nice if I got paid a little bit more in AmeriCorps. But I think that's it. I wouldn't change anything. I have a lot of interesting experiences to help get me where I need to be. Let's do Jack, Chris, and Kate.
Yeah, that is a deep question. I wouldn't change anything I did. In part because I didn't necessarily have a lot of options to get myself through St. Mike's. I guess I wish I had sat down. It's weird to link this to a career, but it's true. And learned more about how loans impact your professional options. I mean, where you can live, that kind of stuff like that. Back when we went, I think it's getting a little better, but they really did not have to tell you anything. And they liked it that way. It's uncomfortable, but I wish I'd reviewed that part a little bit more. But, I wouldn't have changed it for any reason at all. It's just one of those things where it's like, sometimes you got to bite the bullet and do the thing you've been putting off and learn more about your circumstances. Not that it would have changed much for me, but I think knowledge is power, right? And once you're aware, as the great Dave Landers says, you are responsible.
Yeah. Well, first I want to thank everybody. This has been really, really good. I'm happy and grateful for this opportunity to speak with you all, and hopefully the students take something away from it as well. I guess for me, I joined a new field that was unrelated to my formal education at the time. So I kind of came in with a baseline knowledge of like zero. There was a lot of on-the-job training. So maybe had I been more focused a little bit early, I may have been a little bit more well prepared. But that wasn't a problem. That was something that just presented opportunities for me. But if I had to change something, that'd probably be it.
Yeah, I really like this question because it's so, I don't know, it's so hard to answer because probably nothing, probably nothing, because even if it was something like, I've had some gigs, I saw like the questions that I did not like, right? They were not for me. I was certainly not for them. And, it was very important though for me to figure out what I liked and didn't like. So at the end of the day, I still got this takeaway, even though it was sometimes deeply painful, right? I think too, it was a little bit about having confidence in myself. Imposter syndrome is so real. Pandemic is so very long. And, also I think probably taking a step back from the game sometimes to make money, that's okay. Like in pandemic, I graduated. A series of events happened in which I found myself in my position. But in pandemic, I was a nanny, teaching basic, like brush your teeth, reading, it's like, I don't work with preschoolers like that on a regular basis, but I got that job done, and for a long time I was like, oh man, like, will this pandemic ever end? Will I return to science? And in my off time, I was working on my manuscript, trying to get published, trying to do all this stuff. And it was like this weird thing, but it was also so beautiful to also have a moment to be like, wow, I'm teaching this little kid to read. And oh my gosh, she just read Cat, and it was crazy. But like, I think like super driven, super ambitious Caitlin would have never, I would have been like, yeah, kids are great. What I need to finish this like stuff, I was a little shark sometimes because I wanted stuff to get done and, things like that. And that was a lot. So I think too, it's like no regrets, because at the end of the day, we're going to end up where we're going to end up. And, you're going to find your own paths. And, I just think it's awesome that you're interested in kind of learning more about all the paths that are out there. So thanks for your time too.
Perfect timing. We are just wrapping up. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. I hope you can go back to this recording and listen to it on two. I've gotten really good at that and get all the good bites that you need to have a really successful post St. Mike's life. You'll do great. People are here for you. Reach out to the alumni office and Angie, she's got a great staff working with her. So thank you so much for everyone attending. Friends, it was great to see you all as well, and new friends as well. So we'll be in touch. Reach out on LinkedIn if you want to find us. That's all I got. I got to go feed my dog now. So have a good night, everybody, and take care.